Now, I think you finally understand what I have been trying to say all this time. This is war, but it's not a tactile war. This is a psychological war. It is a war of minds and intellect. A war where we are destined to win as men. We will win. Our ammunition is not hate or intolerance. It is the peace and capacity of going our own way. You know, the manufacturers of these lies that we've been sold, they don't like this. They don't want it. And they'll do anything to stop it, to stop the truth. But we know this. We already know this. So just keep one hand on your hip, your pistol, and the other above your eyes to block the blinding confusion of those that would attempt to make us all fail. Now let me insert my own concepts about everything I've been trying to explain up until now, and I will put it in point form, starting with point number 1. The definition of rape has been corrupted. If we simply look at the dictionary.com version of rape, as a noun it says this: unlawful sexual intercourse or any other sexual penetration of the vagina, anus, or mouth of another person. And that's part of it. But what I want to understand here is, why does it have to be penetration? Why can it not be penetrated? Now, I remember when I was a young boy of maybe 18 years old, walking home from a bar one night with my girlfriend, I passed out. I was so drunk, I fell down and passed out on someone's front lawn. I blacked out. I couldn't remember anything. But when I came to, when my eyes opened, my girlfriend was on top of me with my cock inside of her pussy, riding the fuck out of me on somebody's front lawn. Now, I did not agree to that. I was unconscious. So did she rape me? Well, I think she did. But according to this definition, she couldn't have, because you can't rape somebody if you don't have a penis. And this is bullshit. But yes, I was raped that night. When I came to, I slowly came to my senses and pushed her off of me. And we both went home and went to sleep. Did I call the police? Did I call the newspaper? Did I call the local college? Did I scream rape at the top of my lungs to anybody that could hear me in the neighborhood? No, I didn't. And this is the difference, my friends. This is the difference. And we as MGTOW must understand how rape is defined today. Even with the dictionary definition I showed you earlier, apparently it can only occur when something penetrates an orifice. It cannot be considered rape if an orifice is forcibly shoved onto a penetrating object, aka a penis in the real world. And I doubt a vibrator or dildo or a cucumber can be charged with rape. Well, at least now it can't. And as I stated before, I have personally experienced having a hole forcibly shoved upon my penetrating staff. It's really so sad that most people in the free world would consider that this was just a lucky coincidence that happened to me, which should be met with high fives and rounds on the house. Further, to compare it to other crimes, let us consider forced entry into a place of residence in order to steal something valuable within. Well, what if the valuable object of that residence happened to be planted on an unsuspecting person in order to make him look like he was the one that broke in to steal it? I mean, is this a good enough analogy? I'm trying to put it together. Let me know. But again, that which was meant to be penetrated was forced upon the accused so-called penetrator before any action of actual penetration could ever occur. So let's meditate on this for a moment. Just a moment. And this, I believe, in itself is enough evidence that feminism, this is not our enemy, but that the overriding threat of gynocentrism within global culture needs to be seriously addressed and remedied. And now I'll move on to point number 2. And remember, my MGTOW brothers, These points that I'm making now is for us to discuss and reflect on and try to understand what we're dealing with. Point number 2 is this. Rape is a very hard crime to prove because there's usually only 2 participants, the raper and the rapee, shall we say. And because of this, it usually comes down to he said versus she said. And this is much like domestic violence. You know, it almost seems that any so-called crime committed with only participants in the crime as witnesses is dominated by the gynocentric concept that only men could possibly be the perpetrators and only women could be the victims. Yeah, bullshit. Now, rape rarely has witnesses, almost never. And even if it does, a victim of rape within the modern age of technology must immediately try to gather physical evidence, such as, DNA, to prove their case. And this is one reason I will never, ever believe a woman who makes a fool out of herself in popular media by claiming she was raped 20 years ago. Are you fucking serious? Yeah, well, good luck with that, Bill Cosby. But let's consider what rape as a crime must entail. First of all, it must be 2 people with one of the party willing to force themselves onto the other with the result of sexual intercourse as an outcome. And the obvious other participant must not want it. Now, this calls into play many things. For example, rape shield laws and statutes of limitation. And now I've gone over rape shield laws in the past in another video, which you can watch later to see what I'm saying. And I'll post again the links below. But also we must consider that the statute of limitations says this about crime and rape. Now, from one source I found, this is what the statute of limitations says.
Statute of limitations, a type of federal or state law that restricts the time within which legal proceedings may be brought. Statutes of limitations, which date back to early Roman law, are a fundamental part of European and U.S. law. These statutes, which apply to both civil and criminal actions, are designed to prevent fraudulent and stale claims from arising after all evidence has been lost or after the facts have become obscure through the passage of time or the defective memory, death, or disappearance of witnesses. The statute of limitations is a defense that is ordinarily asserted by the defendant to defeat an action brought against him after the appropriate time has elapsed. Therefore, the defendant must plead, and let's stress this, the defendant must plead the defense before the court upon answering the plaintiff's complaint. If the defendant does not do so, he is regarded as having waived the defense and will not be permitted to use it in any subsequent proceedings.
You know, after doing a number of videos on rape and the laws that apply to it and similar crimes, I've come to believe that the Romans had something good going on in regards to a fair judicial system. You know, their sound ideas have seemed to have adapted well into the coming centuries and laws within constitutional acts of both North America and Europe. However, let's just play devil's advocate, shall we? Why don't we take a look at one old and ugly feminist's point of view on these long-standing laws of equality and justice? After all, it seems that it is these feminist trolls that hold the popular narrative in the modern age within Western culture. So now I will cite this article, and it's titled, if you can believe it,
Cosby Rape Allegations. It's time to end the statute of limitations in sexual assault cases.
Now I'll quote from the article, supposedly written by one Eileen McNamara, which, if memory serves me correctly, that name translates directly to
dried up white woman whore who has no sense of reality.
Well, citation might be needed on that translation. Alright, jokes aside, I'm now going to summarize this article and make some comments on it as I go along. And it states this.
In the age of DNA, why are there still statutes of limitations in sexual assault cases? In an era that venerates transparency, Why are confidentiality agreements still allowed to shield perpetrators and silence their victims? I do not know whether Cosby is guilty of the charges engulfing him. Neither do those who would convict him based on the number of accusers and the similarities in their accounts. All but one of the more than a dozen women who have accused Cosby of sexually assaulting them across 4 decades did not seek criminal charges, concluding, reasonably but regrettably, that a crime which is always difficult to prove would likely be impossible against a wealthy defendant who was a beloved national icon.
Oh, God. So where do we start? Well, let's go back to the beginning, where the author said this: in the age of DNA, why are there still statutes of limitations in sexual assault cases? This is funny. Look, honey, even DNA evidence has an expiration date. Even when you clip toenails off your feet, those things decompose and eventually are no longer available for evidence of any kind. A child should know this. What, do you think after 3 decades there might still be globules of Cosby's sperm floating around in one of those self-proclaimed victims' loose and old vaginas? Hey, maybe a pubic hair got stuck up there somewhere. Fuck, give me a fucking break. Anyway, then she goes on to say this: in an era that venerates transparency, why are confidentiality agreements still allowed to shield perpetrators and silence their victims? What the fuck? Whoa, hold on there, baby. Seriously. I don't know about you or any of the listeners out there right now, but when was the last time you ever heard of a man who's been accused of rape and still been allowed anonymity, even if no evidence has been found in order to prosecute him of a crime? I mean, what kind of a sick world is this woman living in? Go ahead. Take a look back over the last year of 2014 and point me out one single case of rape accusation where the accused man was allowed to keep his anonymity until he was actually found guilty. This is beyond ridiculous. What kind of a world do these women live in? These authors of these goddamn articles, who hires them? Do they have no windows in their houses? It's insane. But anyway, moving on. Then she goes on to say this: I do not know whether Cosby is guilty of the charges engulfing him. Yes, that's right, bitch. You don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows. So quit trying to make a fucking buck off of tarnishing this man's name. You know, it's people like this woman and others who follow in this fashion that make me disgusted with the human race. It's unbelievable. Okay, the last part I showed you says this: a crime which is always difficult to prove would likely be impossible against a wealthy defendant who was a beloved national icon. What the fuck? No! A crime that is impossible to prove does not suddenly become possible if the person is poor or not a national icon. In fact, Cosby being a wealthy national icon, as this sick woman put it, is probably the only thing that will save him from the onslaught of gold-digging whores trying to make bank off of slandering his name and reputation. Because believe you me, if this same thing is done to a poor man, the only thing that this poor man has to look forward to is hard time. Well, at least until the woman confesses that she was actually lying. Because you know, when a poor man is falsely accused, you can be certain that the woman accusing him isn't doing it for money. Well, unless she can get a little out of bleeding it from the media attention. And that does happen.